All right. Well, we're here with another guest, Rikesh. Welcome. Thank you for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Very, very nice to meet you. Back. I mean, we'll rewind it back to, I guess, how we came across it. I think we came across his work on the Vogue business thing, right?
Yep. No,
And then
Clark.
shout out to Leah for like linking us up.
Yeah.
I reached out to her because I was connected with her on LinkedIn, and she was like, "Nah, you need to interview Rikesh." I was like, "All right, cool. Let's
I,
get."
yeah, no, but Leah's great for doing that.
Yeah,
Like she will champion people. Like,
yeah,
and I think with that, well, obviously we'll touch on it later. But cut from another cloth was something that I had planned like ages ago, and it was just with the intention, like, right, let's just do it for other box. And she saw the stuff that I was writing and the images that I produced. She's like, yeah, we need to go bigger on this. So she was like, she was the one that made it happen with
wow,
Vogue Business. Because again,
wow,
well, she knew, she was like, look, I reckon we can push this and pitch it to a few publications.
yeah.
Vogue Business were the first that we pitched to, well, that she sent the deck to, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. I was like,
So how did
is
that
it
feel?
always that easy?
How did that feel? So I know your post on that. Like we're gonna dive straight into it, but you said it was like a pinch you moment. Like seeing, how did that feel? Seeing your work on Vogue, like that's incredible.
Yeah, it was. It took a while to get to that pinch me moment because it was a lot of stress initially. Because when it was initially going to be like a 5,000 word, like 9 interviews, all like super in depth, plus the portraits and like capturing everyone, and also talking about diversity touch points, which in itself is a whole thing. And we kind of like weren't sure how it was going to be formatted, so we spent a long time over that Christmas period, because it was supposed to go out like the week before Christmas, trying to figure out, right, how are we doing this? Like they can't do like 10 articles, but we can't cut anyone out because it'll be doing them a massive disservice and kind of defeats the whole point of the premise, right?
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, it was a lot of kind of stress to get it over the line, and then they kind of said that like the first week of January we're going live with it. So I was like, oh, cool, let's do it. But then it was like, and I can't remember what was happening, but I had something else going on at that point when it launched. So I was like, I wasn't even like present when all of it went live. So I was like, I had to kind of give it some space. And then only like a few days later, my wife was like, you're published in Vogue Business, right? I'm like, why are you saying anything about it? That's a good point. And then after like a week after, I was like, oh, literally, like, because there was at one point where when they launched, it was like the entire homepage. So
Yeah.
like all 5 articles were
Yeah.
there front and center. So I was like, man, you best believe I screenshot. A really, really cool way to kickstart the year, I think. Because one of the things that I wanted to try and do more is have more bylines in big publications.
The question I had was like with Savile Row and stuff. Like, how, why did you find that you wanted to get into writing about what you saw there? Do you see what I mean? Like, it was I got a lot from it, and like I feel there's other questions which I was going to ask, like um the people you interacted with along the time you've been working there. Were there just moments you're like, we need to showcase this is happening?
Yeah, man.
Um,
I
yeah,
think the biggest thing. So I've been working on and off Savile Row for probably about 10 years.
yeah,
Firstly, it was I didn't really see too many brown guys just roaming around Savile Row unless they were like super rich and customers. But then, the further I kind of went into these brands, started meeting and getting to know the people, I was like, oh, okay, there's actually a lot of diversity on Savile Row compared to what a lot of people will assume, that it's very upper class, a certain type of person.
yeah, perception, yeah,
Yeah, whereas actually, it's not like that at all. Like you go into a lot of the tailoring houses, the majority of the apprentices, undercutters, whatever, are young women of varying backgrounds. So there's a community called Women in Tailoring now, which is basically Savile Row tailors who are women, and actually just tailors in general, and like they're like a couple hundred strong.
wow,
And then so that was the kind of one thing, and then you know, with the diversity of Savile Row's product offering. So, before it was a place where you could only go to get bespoke suits. You can get more now. There's a lot of ready-to-wear brands there. There are a lot of tailoring houses that are doing ready-to-wear, but there's also brands that are doing different things. So there's like shoes you can get now. There's a company called Bennett Winch, which specializes in leather goods. They were like the first accessories only brand to be on Savile Row. You've got cloth surgeon Rav, who set up shop as one of the first British Asian owners of a Savile Row property, who does bespoke streetwear. So he's, he kits out everyone from like Ian Wright to Nas, and it's like, it's cool. There's a coffee shop there. There's going to be a couple of restaurants there. And I think with the diversification of the product, it didn't come in tandem, but it's obviously helped in the sense of there's a lot of people of color, of different ethnicities, backgrounds, age, class, that work in and around Savile Row. And it was just one of those things where, and it's apparent as well, if you walk down Savile Row, you'll see these people now who are finally front of house, who are finally being able to be client facing.
Sorry, the words you said, I remember you on one of your answers, you said it was a good representation of what London is in that area.
For sure. It's a melting pot. Like London has always been a melting pot, and now finally Savile Row is beginning to catch up with that. Yeah. So you're seeing a lot of variety of backgrounds of really cool people, and like really cool young people as well. Like a couple of the tailors that I featured in Cut From Another Cloth. So to Kudzwa, Quadio, like they're doing really cool stuff.
I was going to ask you about that because the diversity, I guess that, it was good to read your series to see how it's changing. Is there influence of, people, the diverse set of people that work there now starting to permeate into the actual products itself? Because obviously, like, you've got Oswald Boateng, who's like a good designer and probably brings a little bit of African drizzle.
Obviously, like you still come to Savile Row for classic suiting, right? So there will be an extent. But whether it's like you've got a person of color creating that suit in that style, in itself is massive. So I'd say it's hard to really gauge, but I do think more so for the independent tailors that are setting up their own thing, there is a lot of prominent influence of their kind of heritage and that kind of stuff. But again, right now it's still probably more streetwear that's doing it, because it's a lot easier to implement that kind of stuff into streetwear versus like traditional English classic tailoring. There'll be signs, Oswald Boateng is a great example in that, like it's really cool, some of the stuff that they make, but also the displays that they have, the artwork and that kind of stuff.
You can see they like put an effort into trying to replicate some sort of ounce of culture.
For sure.
But it's a big thing. I was just going to say with the Savile Row, like I think this is what you mentioned as well around with luxury brands keeping heritage. I do know, like you just mentioned, Savile Row is embracing change and like it's a good thing. But then there's also a balance of like letting go of what the perception of Savile Row is. So what would you see as a good medium way, if that makes sense? Like it's good to get other designers in, but then not lose that.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think their heritage and the history will mean that they never lose that.
Yeah.
I think that's a given. The same way like Naples will always be known as like the classic tailoring, classic Italian tailoring. Savile Row is Savile Row. People from around the world, if they've never been, they know what Savile Row is about vaguely, but they all know. So I don't necessarily think that there's a need for much more. I think that it's going to happen gradually, because it is.
It's already happening.
It's like 10 years ago, Savile Row is so different. Just in terms of like, what people are wearing, it's a lot more casual, but it's cool and it's really well constructed and it's really well made. There is a lot more diversity. There's a long way to go, because there are still some like old school perceptions of how things need to be, but the younger generation are now being like, no, that's not how we do things anymore. It's that changing of the guard kind of.
Yeah, it's like that classic thing of, I think Savile Row, looking at the history and stuff, it was always known as this place where, lords and, elite gentlemen used to come because there was a client discretionary kind of like relationship. And that's why it's always been, you get the high-end suits and the high-end tailors in that area.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, like you said, now it's breaking a mold into, okay, we need to open up, because firstly, like you said, after COVID, bricks and mortar was just disappearing. Like,
Savile Row was not in a good shape before COVID, and actually, COVID ended up really helping. In that time, obviously, it was quite like there's no one buying anything because
Nobody wants a suit anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you were saying, you were wearing one like
a whole in a suit.
Yeah.
Whereas as soon as like COVID ended, boom, like a lot of these tailoring houses recorded their best ever figures.
Yeah.
Because people were like, I want to wear suits. I'm tired of just being in like
loungewear.
And they had the money from saving up.
Exactly. Yeah. They had money to burn, man. It was wild because it's like, you kind of think about obviously like the 1% that aren't really affected by it anyway. Inevitably, they're going to be buying stuff. But you also had like regular, like working class, like middle class people that, you know, had thousands saved because they didn't go on holiday.
Yeah.
And you're like,
I did that. I'm guilty. I bought like a 100. There you go. I bought like a bloody £380 leather jacket, which I never needed it. I was like, you know what? I've got the cash.
Fair enough. We deserve it after. Yeah, I hear it. I mean, to be fair, I wanted to ask about with the diversity changing in Savile, because the thing is, I mean, you know, being from Southeast Asian backgrounds and African background, in Nigeria, for example, there is still a connection to what the British heritage is from the time that, from the fact that it was a colony and it's part of the colony. And it's like, do you find that some of the people in Savile Row now, even though it's diverse, want to hold on to that because they want to be part of that British heritage? Because that's at home, you know, your parents would be like, this is what's prim and proper. This is even English words that my parents use that I've never heard a English person in England say, like rigmarole or vagabond, you know what I mean? Or gallivanting around the place. They hold on to that sense of speaking English as like the quintessential English. Do you find it with people working there that they like that whole heritage?
Yeah. I mean, it is very classic still, right? You know, they've got into this industry knowing what it's about. And also, you know, especially when it comes to like American tourists, love to play up.
Yeah.
Play it up because it's like, they eat it up, man.
It's like they got the dollars, right?
Yes, yeah, for sure.
I got a suit from Savile Row. Yeah, buddy.
And it's, you know, it's good because you kind of like, you still want to go to Savile Row and be like, this is Savile Row.
Yeah.
You know, I think if it lost that, it wouldn't be authentic because that's the thing. It's like when it's proper, it's authentic.
Yeah.
That's what it was. That's what it will be.
No, I hear that.
Yeah.
So what's next for you in terms of like with the writing and with, have you got any other projects that you would want to get into?
There's quite a few things in the pipeline that I've been working on. One of the main things that I've touched on is like my aim is to get into a few more bylines. So like I'm spending a lot more time actually writing and doing more kind of like long form pieces, mainly around menswear. But I do a lot of work in like mental health and that kind of stuff as well. So it's a kind of open book in terms of that kind of stuff that I want to work on. There's a friend of mine and I made like 30 demos 10 years ago, like that we were going to turn into an R&B album, which we then sat on and never did anything with. And then we listened back to those.
I need to hear it.
Yeah. No, we're listening back to that and we're like, oh, this stuff still sounds good. But now we're like, we've got 10 years.
Well, and it's worked well because you're going back into that sound, right? Sonically, you're still like you're reminiscing into or finding R&B tracks that sound like yesteryear. Basically,
but the thing is, a lot of the like a younger lot now, it's just a different type of artist on it, but they're going back to the quintessential R&B sound because they realized, hold on, we stopped making good R&B for a long time.
And I think to hear it. I think like one of the reasons we shelved it was obviously there's a lot of stuff going on, but R&B then, like UK R&B was just not. No one was really resonating with it. And I think genuinely it's only been, and like you had like insane artists like that were at their peak. You were like Marsha Ambrosius, Daly, but then everyone thought they were American.
Yeah. But they copied the they had to copy the accent as well, right?
But it's like, there was so many like really good, like Fundamental was sick.
Yeah.
And like they had the best vocals. One of the
that's a throwback.
They were one of the
they were hard.
They were hard ever.
Yeah,
like their vocals were insane. You got like Talay Riley, like all of those guys, Louis Kessian. They were
he was.
They were
Yeah, they were.
They never got their flowers, and I think like genuinely, had they come into fruition
Now.
they would have smacked it. Yeah,
it's like you've got some really killer artists from the UK coming out
Yeah.
in terms of like K1 and like a lot of cats, but like that level R&B, if that was here now, bam, that would have killed.
Especially with the rates at which you can produce now. It's
Yeah.
you'd have mixtapes or EPs every other week if you wanted to.